the lymphatic system. All right? Everybody see that?
Yes. Yep.
Good.
Yep.
Okay. Chapter 22, the lymphatic system and immunity. The purpose of this chapter is to understand the structure and function of the lymphatic system, to compare innate and adaptive immune systems, and to compare cell-mediated and antibody immunity, and to briefly discuss aging and stress. Innate immunity. Innate immunity is non-specific. You are born with it. It's present at birth. It includes all of the defense mechanisms. Whoa, what was that? It includes all the defense mechanisms that provide general protection against invaders and a wide range of pathogens. Non-specific. Your skin, your saliva, the gastric juices with acid, it's all non-specific. Adaptive immunity is immunity that is very, very specific. It involves the activation of specific lymphocytes that combat a specific pathogen or foreign substance. So innate immunity you were born with. Adaptive immunity means you have specific lymphocytes that adapt to a particular pathogen. The body system that carries out the immune response is your lymphatic system. The lymphatic system consists of various structures and organs that contain lymphatic tissue and bone marrow, and a fluid that flows within every lymphatic vessel called lymph. And this is basically the lymphatic system. Here are your vessels. Here is your bone marrow. Here is your spleen. And here is your thymus. Those are the basic elements of your lymphatic system. We will talk more about them in greater detail. The lymphatic system has three functions: to drain interstitial fluid, to transport dietary fats, and to carry out immune responses. The lymphatic vessels begin in capillaries. The lymphatic system is a one-way system. It goes towards the heart. It doesn't go backwards. It goes forward towards the heart. The lymphatic systems of the head drain into the chest. The lymphatic systems of the legs and the abdomen drain into the chest. So that is very, very important. It's a one-way system, a one-way system. From the vessels, the lymph passes through lymph nodes. Lymph nodes are all over your body. And then the lymph nodes drain into trunks. The trunks then drain into the two ducts that are on either side of your body. The one on the left is known as the thoracic duct. It is the left-sided lymphatic duct. The one on the right is the right lymphatic duct. So the one on the left has a specific name. It is known as the thoracic duct. The one on the right is just known as the right lymphatic duct. Okay? Again, there are lymph nodes all over your body which drain into lymph trunks, and those lymph trunks drain into the lymphatic ducts. Thoracic duct on the left, the right lymphatic duct on the right. How does the lymph get into the bloodstream? Remember, the lymph vessels are draining the interstitial fluids. They're getting rid of waste. They're getting rid of foreign bodies. And they go into the subclavian veins on both sides. The right subclavian vein on the right and the left subclavian vein on the left. The subclavian veins is the pathway for the lymph ducts to put the lymph fluid into the bloodstream. That's where the two systems meet. That's where the two systems meet. Okay? What I want you to understand is that the thoracic duct, which is on the left side, drains the majority of the body. If you go over to the homunculus, you can see that the area in green is drained by the thoracic duct. So the majority of lymph gets into the left subclavian vein. The right lymphatic duct only drains the head and neck, the right side of the chest, and the right arm and hand. There it is. So the majority of lymph that comes from your body that goes into the bloodstream is drained from the thoracic duct, otherwise known as the left lymphatic duct. There it is. And this is just showing you the right subclavian vein, the left subclavian vein, and this is where the lymph meet the bloodstream. Interstitial fluid goes into the lymph capillaries. The lymph capillaries drain into the lymph vessels. The lymph vessels drain into the lymph trunks. The lymph trunks drain into the two lymph ducts. The lymph ducts drain into the subclavian vein. That is the circulation of lymph getting into the bloodstream. There are primary and secondary organs in the lymphatic system. The primary lymphatic organs are where the lymphocytes become immunocompetent, where they mature. They mature in two places, and those two places are the primary lymphatic organs, and they are the red bone marrow and the thymus. I want to emphasize this because cells that mature in the bone marrow are called B cells, B lymphocytes. Cells that mature in the thymus are called T cells or T lymphocytes. Those are the two primary lymphatic organs. Here is the thymus. Here is the thymus. In a neonate, a little baby, this thymus is huge because they are developing an immune system. And these are where the T lymphocytes will mature, the thymus. As you get older, your thymus shrinks. And we'll talk about that when we talk about aging. The thymus. There are secondary lymphatic organs. The secondary lymphatic organs are your lymph nodes, your spleen, and your lymphatic nodules. This is a lymph node. This is a lymph node. You don't have to know the structure of the lymph node. Just know where the lymph nodes are. They're in your neck, cervical lymph nodes. They are in your axillary region, under your arms, axillary lymph nodes. They are in your groin, inguinal lymph nodes. They are also in your mediastinum, mediastinal lymph nodes, in the center of your chest. And these are where T cells and B cells congregate. They congregate. Once they leave the primary lymphatic organs, the bone marrow and the thymus, they congregate in lymph nodes. So if you step on a nail, the lymph nodes of your inguinal region will send lymphocytes to kill the bacteria that is in that nail. So it's localized. It's localized. The spleen. The spleen is the largest secondary lymphatic organ. It's in your left upper quadrant of your abdomen, and it has many functions besides immunity. When we get into more of the bloodstream and the spleen, I will tell you more about it. It has not only immune function, it also has red blood cell function. This is where red blood cells go to die. This is where platelets aggregate. So it has a function on not only lymphocytes, but it also has a function on red blood cells and platelets. Lymphatic nodules are all over your body. These are not lymph nodes. These are masses of lymphatic tissue that are not surrounded by a capsule. The lymph nodes are surrounded by capsules. These things are everywhere. They're basically in your gastrointestinal tract. They're in your urinary tract. They're in your reproductive tracts, and they're in your respiratory airways. The one nodules that are in your GI tract have a name, and that name is MALT, M-A-L-T, mucosa-associated lymphatic tissue. It needs to be in your gastrointestinal tract because when you eat something that's not cooked, it could contain bacteria. So when you go to the store and you buy broccoli and you bring it home and you don't wash it and you eat it, it could have bacteria on it. So you get it into your GI tract, and MALT, mucosa-associated lymphatic tissue, will send out lymphocytes to see if there are any bacteria on that broccoli, and it'll kill it. It'll kill it. So it's important. It's also important to have lymphatic nodules in your respiratory airways. When you breathe in the air, it could have COVID-19 in it, and it will attack COVID-19. It also attacks bacteria too that you breathe in. So it's important to know that. All right? Don't worry about the development of lymphatic tissue. It's not important. But we should talk about innate immunity. Remember, innate immunity is that you're born with it. It is not specific. You have two lines of defense. that you're born with. You're born with your skin and your mucous membranes. You're also born with your internal defenses. We'll talk about your internal defenses. Remember, innate immunity is non-specific. These are the non-specific immunities of your skin and mucous membrane. Your skin is a barrier. You have tears to wash away bacteria from your eyes. You have saliva. In the saliva are enzymes to kill bacteria. You have mucus. You have cilia in your lungs to get rid. Cilia are hairs to get rid of dust. Your epiglottis will close to prevent things from getting into your trachea. Your urine has got acidity to it. You get rid of bacteria by having a bowel movement or by vomiting. You have chemical defenses, sebum from oil glands in your skin, lysozymes from glands in your skin and glands in your stomach. Also gastric juice. You'll learn in the GI section that gastric juice is extremely acidic. Its pH is less than 2. Why? To kill bacteria. You also have internal defenses that are non-specific. There are many antimicrobial proteins in your body. One of them is cytokines, and cytokine storm will be a lecture that you'll have next week from one of the students. It is an antimicrobial protein. Phagocytes. Phagocytes are neutrophils and monocytes that'll kill anything, non-specifically. If you remember, there are 3 types of lymphocytes. One of them is non-specific, and those are known as NK lymphocytes, otherwise known as natural killer cells. They're non-specific. The other 2 are specific. Inflammation. What is inflammation? Well, it consists of 4 things. It consists of redness. It consists of heat. It consists of swelling. And it consists of pain. So those are the 4 non-specific properties of inflammation. Also, why do you develop a fever? You develop a fever because it's non-specific. You can get a fever from anything. Some of you told me before class started that when you got your second dose of COVID-19 vaccine, you develop a fever. That's a natural, innate defense, not specific to COVID-19. Phagocytosis. There are 2 main phagocytes in your body, and they are neutrophils and monocytes. And they have functions to kill microbes. When there is a microbe in your tissue or in your bloodstream will send neutrophils to the site. Neutrophils, because of chemotaxis from the tissue, will herald the recombination of neutrophils to the microbe. This is a chemical signal given off by the tissues that a microbe is there or a foreign protein is there. So the first step in phagocytosis is chemotaxis. The second step is adherence. The monocyte or the neutrophil will adhere to the microbe. The third step is ingestion. It will ingest the microbe. It brings it into the cell. Then, because of enzymes, the fourth phase is digestion. It will then kill it. So the fifth stage is killing. And there is a sixth stage that gets rid of it. But the important things are 1, chemotaxis, 2, adherence, 3, ingestion, 4, digestion, and 5, killing. So that's phagocytosis, done by neutrophils and monocytes. It's the same thing. Here it is. Here it is. Your tissue gets injured, bacteria comes in, it sends a signal out to the phagocytes, and it destroys this microbe by the 5 phases. 5 phases. Okay? Innate immunity. You are born with it. You are born with a physical barrier, the epidermis of your skin. You are born with mucous membranes. You are born with mucus. You are born with hair. You are born with cilia in your upper respiratory tract to get rid of dust, to get rid of microbes. You were born with a lacrimal apparatus in your eyes to make tears, to wash away irritating dust and microbes. You produce saliva. In your saliva, there are enzymes which will kill bacteria. You urinate to wash microbes out of your urethra. You expel microbes from the body also by vomiting or defecating. There are also chemical factors. Sebum in the oil glands of your body produce acid, which will inhibit the growth of microbes. They also will produce lysozyme, which will become an additional substance in your perspiration, in your tears, in your saliva, in your nasal secretions that will kill bacteria. You also have gastric juice, which will destroy bacteria and some toxins in the stomach. And in the vagina, you have acidity that discourages bacterial growth of microbes. Remember, it is non-specific and you are born with it. Innate defenses. There's a second line of innate defenses, and basically it's antimicrobial substances, interferons. Interferons are cytokines. These are antimicrobial proteins. Interferons are specific. They are specific for viral infections, not specific for a virus, but specific for all viruses. So they are still innate defenses. There's also a protein system in your body called the complement system, which causes the breakdown of microbes and contributes to inflammation, pain, swelling, redness, and heat. There are also iron-binding proteins, antimicrobial proteins, a lymphocyte called an NK cell, which will kill certain microbes, non-specific, phagocytes, neutrophils, and monocytes. Here again is the word inflammation. I'm going to tell you one more time. Pain, swelling, redness, and heat. And then fever. Developing a fever will kill bacteria. It's all non-specific. All of you are born with it. We now leave innate immunity and go into the more complicated adaptive immunity. Adaptive immunity refers to the body's ability to defend itself against specific invading agents. We now have to talk about antigen antibody responses. A foreign substance that will provoke an immune response is known as an antigen. The body's response to the antigen is known as an antibody. Adaptive immunity not only has specificity, but it also has memory. This specificity and memory differentiates it from innate immunity that you are born with. This adaptive immunity is divided into two types: cell-mediated or antibody-mediated. Cell-mediated means that specific cell kills the foreign body. Antibody-mediated immunity means that cell produces an antibody that will kill that foreign protein. I want to make sure everyone understands that. Is anybody lost, or does anybody not understand that? Oh, I need feedback.
No, I get it. Thank you, though.
Okay, okay. I think it's pretty straightforward. It can get complicated. I'm going to try and uncomplicate it for you. This to me is much more complicated than it should be. Much more complicated. I want you to understand that the primary lymphatic organs, here they are, thymus and red bone marrow, produce mature cells, lymphocytes. In the thymus, they produce T cells. They're known as T lymphocytes. In the bone marrow, they produce mature B cells, B lymphocytes. Mature T cells will differentiate into either a cytotoxic T cell, which will kill a bacteria by itself, otherwise known as CD8 cells. CD8 cells, because they produce a protein called CD8 protein, which will kill a cell. Here it is, cytotoxic, cell death, CD8. Or it will produce a helper T cell. A helper T cell is known as a CD4 cell. A CD4 cell. And that will make the formation of a helper cell. And a helper cell will produce antibodies to kill bacteria. The CD8 cell and the CD4 cell work together. Next week, I will give you a lecture on AIDS. And in AIDS, if you lose this cell, the HIV virus will multiply in your body and you will get AIDS. And once you get AIDS, it's hard to turn around. Okay? So what is watched in a person who is HIV positive is the amount of CD4 cells. That's what's important. That's what's important. Remember, CD8 cells are cytotoxic and they kill things. CD4 or helper cells, they produce antibodies which kill things. Okay? In the bone marrow, you have B cells. You have B cells. And these B cells become clones. And these clones basically all produce antibodies. And that's how they kill things. This is known as antibody-mediated immunity, the B side. The T side is known as cell-mediated immunity because these cells kill things. So the T side kills things directly, and the B side produces antibodies that will kill things. Any cell that produces an antibody is known as a B cell. Specifically, they're known as plasma cells. Plasma cells. All right? So that's the skinny on cell-mediated and antibody-mediated immunity. And you can certainly look at these videos, but that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about immunogenicity. All right? Every antigen has multiple sites on it that can also act as antigens. Here is let's say it's a bacteria. Let's say it's a bacteria. The bacteria itself is an antigen, and your body will make antibodies towards the entire bacteria. But there are parts of this bacteria called epitopes that can also evoke an antibody response. Okay? And I'm not going to take the thunder away from the lecturer next week who's going to lecture on how vaccines work, because this is how vaccines work. They take a part of the bacteria or the virus or the fungus, and they make an antibody towards it. And that's how vaccines work. But you'll tell me more about it next week. Okay? For the immune response to occur, B cells and T cells must recognize that a foreign antigen is present. That bacteria doesn't belong here. That cancer doesn't belong here. B cells can recognize and bind to antigens in the lymph, in the interstitial fluid, or in the blood plasma. T cells, which directly kill, can only recognize fragments of antigenic proteins. In processing an antigen, the antigenic proteins are broken down into peptide fragments. These peptide fragments associate themselves with a complex, and that complex is known as the antigen MHC complex that is inserted into the plasma membrane of a body cell. This is known as antigen presentation. I want you to understand what antigen presentation is. The foreign body, let's say it's a bacteria. The bacteria gets through into the tissue. Because of chemotaxis, the neutrophils go to that area. A neutrophil will engulf that antigen. It now becomes an antigen presenting cell. The neutrophil now becomes an antigen-presenting cell, an APC. That APC will then take it to a T cell or a B cell and say, here, kill this son of a bitch. And either the T cell will directly kill it, or the B cell will produce antibodies to directly kill it. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So, cytokines. You'll have a lecture next week by a student on cytokine storm. But what are cytokines? Cytokines are small protein hormones that stimulate or inhibit normal cell function. There are some big ones here. The big ones are the interleukins. You don't have to know all of them. Just know that interleukins are cytokines, and they promote the proliferation of C4 cells. They promote the proliferation of helper cells, interleukins, cytokines. Okay? Another big one are interferons. Interferons are produced by virus-infected cells to inhibit the replication of the virus into infected cells. They try and prevent that virus from going from cell to cell. So please understand interleukins and please understand interferon, and you will have a lecture on cytokine storm next week. In cell-mediated immunity, the antigen is recognized by the T cell. The T cell will kill it because the T cell is a cytotoxic cell, a CD8 cell. Okay? That's what we're talking about. We're talking about killing it. Killing it. In antibody-mediated immunity, you have helper T cells that stimulate a B cell to produce an antibody. The antibody will then kill the antigen. So in both antibody and cell-mediated immunity, you have to have an APC, an antigen-producing cell, to give that antigen to either a T cell or a B cell. If it's given to a CD8 cell, the CD8 cell will kill it. If it's given to a CD4 cell, a helper T cell, it presents it again to a B cell, and the B cell will produce an antibody and it'll kill it. All right? So that's antibody and cell-mediated immunity. Antibody structure. You don't have to know structure. It's not important. But what is important is to understand that immunoglobulins are antibodies. And there are basically four antibodies that are known as immunoglobulins. IgG, IgA, IgM, and IgE. You don't have to know IgD. It's very uncommon. It's very uncommon. The most abundant immunoglobulin in your body is IgG. It's 80% of all your antibodies. It is the only class of antibody that will cross the placenta. This is what gives the fetus immunity. IgA. IgA is found mainly in things that have an A in it. Look at the words: sweat, tears, saliva, breast milk, gastrointestinal secretions. All those words have an A in it. That's where IgA is. Sweat, tears, saliva, breast milk, gastrointestinal secretions. IgM. IgM is probably one of the most important antibodies there is. It signifies acute infection. If you are worried that you have COVID-19, you can get your blood drawn, and your blood will be tested for antibodies. And if your blood is tested for antibodies and it shows that you have a spike in IgM, you have active COVID disease. So IgM is for active disease. Active disease. IgD is not important. Not important. IgE is very important. IgE is the basis of all allergic reactions, or hypersensitivity reactions, or parasites. If you remember from your eosinophils, which also begins in E, it is also involved in allergic reactions, in parasites. So IgE goes along with eosinophils. So there you have it: IgG, IgA, IgM, IgE. Don't worry about IgD. Complement, you really only have to know that it is a series of proteins that assist in inflammation. You don't have to know anything else about it. There are 9 proteins that are involved in inflammation. Complement system. All right? Here's what I said. Here's what I kind of said. You have to be exposed to something to generate a secondary response. When you are exposed to COVID, here it is. You get a COVID-19 vaccination right here. Here it is. COVID vaccination. The second time you're exposed to it, it goes higher. So your second dose will make you have more of IgG. Initial response, secondary response. It's a building response. It's called memory. It's called memory. This is what happens in allergic reactions. If you're allergic to penicillin, your primary response is very low. But your secondary response is now very high because there's a memory involved. And the second response to penicillin may give you a severe reaction. That's immunological memory. Immunological memory. So how do we acquire immunity? There are 4 ways to acquire immunity. Let's talk about it in the realm of COVID-19. 6 months ago, you were exposed to COVID-19. You got COVID-19. You were sick for a few days. Now you are immune. And the reason you are immune is because you had the disease. That's called naturally acquired active immunity. You acquired it naturally and you actively had the disease. So having the disease will give you naturally acquired active immunity. If you had the mumps, the chicken pox, it's all the same. It's all the same. Okay? How do you get naturally acquired passive immunity? Well, I'm going to give you a shot of IgG antibodies of COVID-19, and now you will be immune to it. So if I give you IgG antibodies towards COVID-19, you didn't have the disease, but you acquired it naturally. So that's called naturally acquired passive immunity. This is what's transferred from mother to fetus. If the mother, while pregnant, has the measles, the baby will get antibodies towards the measles. It's also transferred in breast milk to the baby, okay? The mother has had the measles, the IgA antibodies will also be transferred in the breast milk. She'll get the IgG antibodies through the placenta and IgA antibodies through breastfeeding. All natural. Natural acquired active is when you have the disease. Natural acquired passive is when we give you the antibodies. Artificially acquired active immunity is when we give you the vaccination. COVID-19, I've had both shot 1 and shot 2. Now I am hopefully immune to COVID-19. I now have artificially acquired active immunity. Okay? That makes sense? Artificially acquired is when we give you an infusion of the antibodies. This is a common thing now with COVID-19. If you develop COVID-19, you go to the hospital and you sit there for 4 hours and we give you the antibodies that someone else has had to help you fight the disease. So natural acquired active immunity is you have the disease. Naturally acquired passive immunity is you get it from your mother. Artificially acquired active immunity is you get the vaccination. And artificially acquired passive is you get the antibodies. Any questions on that?
Nope, all good, Professor.
Good, good. Okay. I will talk to you next week, maybe, about diseases that are pretty bad diseases when your body stops recognizing self. Self-recognition is the basis of immune diseases. If I can't recognize a foreign body, I cannot fight an immune system to fight it. I must be able to recognize not only foreign bodies, but also self. Some diseases in your body can occur where you lose recognition for self. And some of those diseases are cancer. Another disease is lupus erythematosus or rheumatoid arthritis. You stop identifying self. Okay? I'm not going to belabor the point. I'll talk to you more about recognition of self. But these are the cells that you should know in the adaptive immune response. We talked about macrophages, neutrophils, and monocytes. They're known as APCs. They present the cell or the bacteria to the B cells or the T cells. The lymphocytes, cytotoxic T cells, they kill things. Helper T cell, this is a CD8 cell. The helper T cell is a CD4 cell. It cooperates with B cells and allows them to stimulate the immune response by producing antibodies. Whoops, sorry about that. There are memory T cells. How do you know that something has been there before? They're called memory cells. Okay? All B cells produce antibodies. B cells will degrade into a plasma cell, which will also produce antibodies, and you also have memory B cells. More important is cytotoxic Ts, helper Ts, and B cells. Very important cells in your immune system. Specificity and memory. Okay? Many things affect your immune system, and one of them is stress. Stress can affect your immune system, and you can get ulcers, all kinds of things due to stress. Aging. When you're born, your thymus is the largest it ever will be. As you get older, your thymus will shrink. Your immune system becomes less susceptible to infections and malignancies. This is why people my age get cancer. This is why people my age get autoimmune diseases. This is why you need to get, as an older person, a stronger vaccination for the flu. It's called Fluzone, because my immune system is not as good as yours. It ages off. Okay? And this is a summary, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about AIDS. Yeah, I'm going to give you a lecture on AIDS, so don't worry about that. I'll give you much more information on AIDS than this slide. And I may even give you a lecture on allergic reactions. Okay? And we talked about autoimmune disease, lupus, and rheumatoid arthritis. All right? Any questions on that? I will put this